You know what? Because I like garlic, we're adding garlic. I could eat that right now. This recipe is just going to help save you some time on Thanksgiving Day and help keep you sane. I did cut this recipe in half. It called for 16 cups of dry breadcrumbs. I'm using just a store-bought bag of seasoned bread chunks. If you want to make it with homemade, fresh, dried bread cubes, go ahead and do that. We are going to saute celery and onion. The recipe calls for 2 cups of chopped onion and 2 cups of chopped celery. Cutting this recipe in half, I'm just going to eyeball it. And of course, you have to saute it in butter. I'm going to turn my skillet on over medium heat. And we will just plop the whole stick of butter in there. So as that's melting down, I'm going to start on our celery and onions. If you want really chunky stuffing, you can cut your vegetable into bigger chunks or smaller chunks. I like at least my celery to be in smaller chunks. And as you get done chopping, just add it right to your pan full of butter. And we will move on to our onions. Be sure to give it a stir. We don't want anything to burn. So here we have our cup of diced celery and our cup of diced onion with our stick of butter, and we are just going to cook this until the onions and celery are translucent. It'll seem like the onions are starting to become see-through. Actually, I'm gonna cook it until the onions start to caramelize, until the onions start to get a nice brown on them. The caramelization brings so much flavor. While the onions are cooking, we can put the stuffing mix into a large bowl. We will be adding our butter and onion and celery mixture to your dry stuffing mix or your dry bread cubes. Your bread cubes don't have to be this small. They can be bigger if you'd like that. We'll set that aside. Another thing you can add to your stuffing, which I think a lot of people do, is sausage. A nice Italian sausage with maybe some fennel or definitely some sage in there to complement this. Another thing we can do while our onions and celery caramelize away is prepare our crock pot. So I don't know how many of you use crock pots. It always seems to be very difficult to get it clean. You can just oil your pan if you want, that's fine, but let me help you. Help me help you. I'm going to be using a crock pot liner. On Thanksgiving, you already have so many things to clean up afterward. Let this one be a quick cleanup. So these are pretty big, and they'll fit oval-shaped crock pots as well. They're pretty universal. So all you do is fit it into your crock pot and wrap the excess around the edge, and you put it back into your crock pot and you are good to go. So you can see that our onions are starting to brown nicely, and you've still got a nice amount of butter in there to mix in with your stuffing mix or your bread cubes. So this is good for me. So I kept this on just below medium heat. I didn't want my butter spitting and spattering on me while I was stirring, or all over my stove. So let's add this to our stuffing mix. Just carefully put it all in. Give it a stir. Now I am going to add 1.5 cups of turkey stock. If you have homemade turkey stock or homemade chicken stock, go ahead and use that. But store-bought will work in a pinch, and that's what I have today. So beef, chicken, turkey, vegetable, bone broth is fine too. Whatever you have, whatever your preference, go ahead and use it. So 1.5 cups. There's 1 and a half. We'll give that a stir. So just stir until you get all of your bread cubes or your stuffing mix coated with the stock. And then we're going to add our seasoning, extra seasoning. Actually, let's taste test this first because I used seasoned stuffing mix. I'll add a little bit, but I'm not going to add as much as the recipe calls for. So I will do a 1/4 teaspoon of poultry seasoning, a 1/2 teaspoon of dry or rubbed sage. If you have fresh, that's fine too. Do a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, any salt will do, and a 1/4 teaspoon of ground black pepper. And you know what? Because I like garlic, we're adding garlic. So I've got some granulated garlic. I'll put a 1/4 teaspoon in my recipe. And give it a mix to get all of those seasonings incorporated. Let's give it one more taste test. Make sure it tastes good before we actually cook it. And because all of these ingredients have been cooked, it's okay. I could eat that right now if I'm being honest. And last thing is 1 beaten egg. This just helps all of our stuffing to come together and hold together. All right. One last stir. Once you have everything well incorporated, we're going to put it into our crock pot. Here we go. And just plop it in. Try not to spill. That'll be the toughest part. Make sure you get it all out of your bowl too. You don't want to leave any of that flavor in there. You don't have to push it into the crock pot. Don't stuff your stuffing into the crock pot. Also, I understand people call this dressing. To me, it's stuffing whether or not it's stuffed in the turkey or not. Just work with me here. All right, so in it goes. We are going to turn it on high for 45 minutes. And then in 45 minutes, we will turn it down to low. And you can get back to entertaining your guests or working on those other Thanksgiving dishes or do whatever you do. So it has been 45 minutes. So we are going to turn our crock pot down to low. And the recipe says for 4 hours. So for me, I'm going to check in 2 hours because I cut the recipe in half. All right, it has been 2 hours. Let's take a look at what our stuffing looks like. It smells awesome. But I want to see what the texture and the moisture level inside looks like. And again, this all comes down to preference. Do you like a juicier stuffing or do you like a stuffing more on the dry side? So let's test it out. I think I'm liking this the way it is. Well, let's give it a taste test. You know what would be perfect with this? Some gravy. But no, this is delicious. It's super versatile. This original recipe called for mushrooms, but I didn't know how the texture of the mushrooms was gonna hold up, so I decided just to leave them out. This is perfect for Thanksgiving. I love the use of the crock pot because it's basically set it and forget it. If you forget about it, it's really not a big deal. If it's drier than you thought it would be, just add some more stock to it. And if the stuffing gets done before you're ready to serve dinner, just put it on warm. Just leave it in there, pop the lid back on, and you'd be good to go. If you liked this video, please give it a big thumbs up. If you want to see the recipes that I've made in the past for the Thanksgiving dinner series, be sure to check out my channel. Thanks for stopping by today.